Birth Boot Camp podcast. I am Liana Wolf, and I am the administrator with Birth Boot Camp.
And I'm Megan Busk. I'm the head of marketing.
And today we are continuing our summer birth stories with Madelynn Meyer. Madelynn, first, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how many kids you have, what you do at Birth Boot Camp.
Yeah, so I live in a little rural town north of Fort Worth, Texas. We've been here for about 7 years and we love it. My husband, Jared, and I have been married for 10 years and we've got 3 kiddos. Our son is 7, our first daughter is 5, and then our baby is 9 months old.
Awesome. So we kind of wanted to hear a little bit about what you do for Birth Boot Camp as well.
Yeah, so I'm a birth camp doula and I absolutely love that. It's the best thing in the world.
Great. So tell us a little bit about your first birth. How did it go?
Yeah, so my first birth, I was just with an OB in a hospital because that's just what you do, right? So that was kind of the journey I started on, but I knew that I wanted a natural birth. So I read the book Natural Hospital Birth to just kind of prepare myself for that. And during my pregnancy, I got diagnosed with gestational diabetes. And that was a huge shock to me because I didn't have any risk factors. I was 24. I was not overweight. It wasn't in my family, like nothing. It really threw me for a loop. So that just kind of set a different tone for my pregnancy, one that was just unexpected. And as I got to my 40-week appointment, my OB was like, okay, well, we're going to induce you because we don't want you to go past your due date. And I was like, wait, what? Like no one had said anything about that throughout my whole pregnancy that would even be the case. So I was already, just upset because I wanted my labor to start naturally and all of that. So I knew that I was going to be induced, but I didn't really know like what that would entail, all the steps that would take. I just kind of was familiar with natural. So I was like, okay, well, I guess we're going to do this. And I didn't know enough to be like, I don't think so. Do we really need to do that? Because they thought he would be, like a really big baby because I have gestational diabetes. So I went in the next morning to be induced and she started my labor by breaking my water. Yes. Yeah. That's how she chose to start it. And I didn't really know any better. So that's how we started. And then she's like, okay, we're going to do Pitocin, which I didn't want to do, but that was the scenario that we were in. So she started me on Pitocin and, just kind of labored throughout the day. And as the contractions got stronger and stronger, if you've ever had Pitocin contractions, they can be pretty awful. So I eventually, yeah. So I eventually ended up getting an epidural to just help myself relax and to handle those contractions. And that evening I got to 5 centimeters. So we started at like 8 a.m. and this was at like 7 p.m. I got to 5 centimeters and the OB just kind of like came in and like sat on my bed and she was like, I don't think this is going to happen. Like, you're just not progressing fast enough. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, no way. I just felt, I knew that something was like off, but I didn't really know what or how to like speak up for myself. And she was like, yeah, like we're just gonna have to do a C-section. Like he's, you've just been out of 5 for a while. I don't think he's like descending well. So I was just completely heartbroken because that was the last thing I wanted was a C-section. And oddly enough, I was her 3rd C-section that night. And it was, around like 7 or 8 at night, which is when most C-sections happen, surprisingly enough, right? So yeah, I had the C-section. It was honestly, I still remember it very vividly. I was like so happy because my son was going to be born and he was going to be safe and he was healthy, but it was also heartbreaking because I felt like that birth experience was kind of taken from me. I didn't get that whole experience with pushing my baby out and all of the things. So after that birth, I was like, okay, never again. Like, I just want to choose a different path so that I know what to do the next time around. So when I got pregnant the second time with my daughter, I hired a doula because I was like, okay, I need somebody on my team who's on my side and who's educated. And I chose midwives this time. I originally wanted to be at a birthing center, but we kind of had like an OB friend kind of scare us into being like, well, you should be at a hospital if you're having a VBAC. Just because, uterine rupture is extremely dangerous. It's just a super low percent chance that it will happen. So we were at a hospital with the midwife group and my doula, and she just did such a great job educating me about VBACs and all the statistics and all the things, just helping me to feel really comfortable, so that I felt empowered to have my VBAC and have this vaginal birth that I always wanted. So, 39 weeks approached, 40 weeks approached, 41 weeks approached. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, is something wrong? Like, why haven't I had her yet? Because I had never been pregnant for that long, And so I was like, wow, 41 weeks. Okay. So I just made the personal decision. I was like, you know what? I'm done being pregnant. I really am. And so I did decide to be induced the second time around. And I made that decision knowing that every intervention that I have, of course, is just leading a greater percent chance to having a repeat C-section. So I did know this. But I also knew that I had a great team on my side. My midwives were very supportive of my VBAC. My doula was very supportive, and I was healthy enough for it and everything. So I chose to go in to the hospital and be induced. And this induction was completely different because we started with a Foley catheter. So we did, that little balloon dilation, which just was so much more gentle. So yeah, so I had that put in at night, and then they gave me, something to help me sleep that night in the hospital. And my contractions did actually kind of start on their own. So I was like, oh, great. Like, maybe we won't need Pitocin. This would be so awesome. Um, but by the morning time, they kind of slowed down and stopped. I was like, dang it. But the catheter, it did get me to like a 3 or 4, which was so great. So we started Pitocin that morning, and the midwives, just knowing that I was a VBAC, they did it just so gradually and so gently, just to make sure that, it didn't overwhelm my body. It wasn't too powerful and too strong right out the gate. And I just felt very like supported throughout that whole process. And my parents came in town to watch my son, and they, came in the room for a while and brought him. And that was just really special for him to kind of be in there and be a part of it, even though he doesn't remember because he wasn't even quite 2 years old yet. But it was just really sweet to have him there. So I was on Pitocin for the majority of the day. And then by that night, I was done because I'd been on Pitocin all day long. These contractions were strong and fierce and just kind of enveloped my whole belly. It just felt like my whole belly was just being squeezed so tight. And I was like, okay, I'm all done. Like, I want my epidural. And my husband and my doula, I told them beforehand, I said, if I ask for one, I want you to kind of fight me on it to make sure that that's what I really want. Because I knew, again, it's another intervention. And I did want, to do this naturally. So they did kind of for a while, they were like, let's try another contraction, let's try, just kind of offered different comfort measures like hip squeezes, and different things like that. And so I did that for a while. And then I just kind of got to this point where I was like, I just can't relax. And I like looked at my husband and like I had tears in my eyes, and I was like, I want it. I need it right now. And so at that point he was like, okay, because he felt so torn. He's like, okay, she said she didn't want it, but like she's looking at me right now, like I have to have this right now. And so of course, he's all like split decision. But I ended up getting the epidural, and for me in that birth, that was what I needed, and that was the best decision for me, because after that I was able to rest. I was able to dilate, because when I got that epidural I was about 6 centimeters, and I was able to go to sleep and then slept through most of the night, and then woke up at like 5:30 a.m. and I was fully dilated and I felt rested, I felt ready. And so the midwife was like, "You're complete. If you want to start pushing, we can do it." And I was like, "Yes, let's do it." And I was
That's great.
just, yes, I was so ready. I was like, "Okay, here we go. The VBAC is happening." So I started pushing, and I was on the epidural. It took me kind of a while to figure out how to push. I was like pushing in my face, and they're like, "Don't push in your face." And I was like, how do I not do that? So it took me a while to figure it out, but I eventually did. And it took about 2.5 hours of pushing, but I was able to do it. And I pushed her out, and just that, and my husband caught her, which was so special. But that moment, like she came out, I just felt this flood of like emotions and happiness, because I was like, I did it. Like I did this VBAC that I wanted for so long. And it was just such an empowering and redemptive moment. And I felt like I was able to take that power back over my body. And she was a little peanut. She was like 6'14". We still call her our peanut. She's little.
At
Um,
41 weeks, she was that little.
Yes, she
Wow.
was. She was so little. And oh yeah, I forgot to mention this, but my first baby, my son, they thought he would be really big, right? He was like 7'3". So
Oh,
he was
wow.
Oh my gosh.
Did you have a fear for gestational diabetes for your baby number two? Was that even something that you had to worry about?
Yes, I did. I was totally thinking about it, because I knew, like, having it once, I was like, okay, there's definitely a chance I could have it again. And I failed, the first test, and I was like, oh no. I'm just like praying. I'm like, please don't let me have it again. And thankfully I passed the second time. So I did not have gestational diabetes with my daughter. And that was just a big weight off my shoulders, that I
I
didn't have
bet.
to, worry about that and prick my finger and do all the things.
Yeah.
So,
Wow, six
so,
pounds. That's so cute.
so before we jump to birth number 3, I just have a couple like comments. First off, OMG on your first OB to be like,
Yeah.
you're 5 centimeters, but it's not gonna, like, what?
Yeah, and that the
Yes.
water that they broke your water first. Like, how
First?
even far along were you at that point? Like, were you dilated at all?
Yeah. I think I was at maybe like a centimeter.
Like
Yeah. I
just
mean, you
Yeah.
have to be a little bit for them to break your water, but man.
oh my gosh. And then for your second, I love that. I mean, your progression of induction is just like it's what it's supposed to look like, in my opinion. Like
Mhm.
that is what induction is supposed to look like. And I love that oh my gosh, just totally just left my brain. Oh, the epidural. I love that you recognized it as a tool that you needed right then. And like it was applied correctly, for lack of a better term, but like it's what you needed and it's what got you to that finish line. And I love hearing stories like that where it's not just, oh my gosh, I can't handle it, I need the epidural, but it's like, no, you've reached the point where rest needs to be your priority, and that gave you that rest.
Yes.
And I love that so much. I'm so happy for you. And we haven't even talked about the third one
You
yet.
talk about the third, I
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
know.
I like to use kind of my personal example now for like perspective with my own clients, because I've had a client like that before, where she started at a birthing center, and she was awake that whole night before, and that whole day she had a posterior labor, and she was just exhausted, and she was like,
Mhm.
I am done. I want to go get to the hospital and have an epidural. And I was like, that's okay. I was like, you're amazing. Like, look how long you've labored for. You've done everything you can. And sometimes you just need rest, and it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. I have a follow-up question as well. Were there anything specific things that you did as far as preparation for baby number one and baby number two?
Yeah. So for baby number one, it was honestly just reading that book was kind of all I did. I didn't take a birth class. I didn't hire a doula. I wasn't really even sure like what they were or if they were like a thing today. I was like, are those things that like women of the
Those are
past, like what?
ancient. Yeah.
Yes. And like home birth, I was like, wait, do people still do that? Like I had no idea. But yeah, second time around, just my doula gave me so much literature and so much research that I could look over myself. And I actually watched a lot of like birth videos too of like women having water births and birthing center births. And it was just very encouraging to just kind of like visualizing myself doing that. And then as well as just kind of visualizations too of like flowers opening and just practice breathing and things like that. So I definitely did more preparation the second time.
Awesome. And then going into baby number 3, was there anything in addition that you added to that preparation?
Yes. So before baby number 3, so I actually did my doula cert when I was 35 weeks pregnant.
Oh,
So
wow.
yes.
So
So
you
I
got
was at
all
my
the information, all of
exactly.
it.
Yes. So I had an entire childbirth education class as well as, my additional doula training and everything. So I felt very educated, very equipped, and knowledgeable going into birth number 3.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. Well, tell us a little bit about that birth.
Yes. So we were done after our first 2. We were like, we're good. We have a boy and a girl. I got my VBAC. I'm good. And the Lord just put this deep desire in my heart for another baby later on. And I was like, someone is missing. We're supposed to have another baby. And later on, here comes our little girl. We're pregnant with her. And I knew this time I was like, this is it. This is the one. This desire that I've had for 7 years to have this natural labor and birth, like this is going to be the one. I just knew. And so I was like, okay, here's the birthing center I want to go to. I want a doula. And the midwives there were just so incredible. My doula was amazing, super seasoned. And I was like, I did my doula cert, had all that training. I just felt very, very ready. So I got to 40 weeks and she's still hanging out in there all cozy, and I had a feeling that I would go late because I did with my daughter. I got to 41 weeks, and so I went to my 41-week appointment and I was like, yeah, she's still in there, still cooking. And I was in early labor when I actually went to that appointment. And she was like, we talked about kind of options because I was 41 weeks and 2 days. She was like, we can leave it alone. I can try a sweep if you want. That might kick things up. It's totally up to you. And I was like, let's do that because I think that might be helpful. So she did go ahead and do a membrane sweep. I think I was at like a 2 or a 3 already. So I had started dilating. I was very effaced. So she did that sweep. And then we live about 40 minutes from the birth center. So we didn't want to be too far away just in case. I didn't want to do that drive in like full on active labor. She did that sweep. And then we just kind of like went out and had a meal together. And I remember like halfway through my meal, I kind of had to stop eating and sit up. And I was like, whew, okay, like the contractions just really kind of started, and there was a green space nearby. So we took a little walk, and I did not get very far. I started walking, and I would just have to stop so frequently and just kind of go through my contraction, breathe it out. And then we just kept walking. And I got to a point where I was like, babe, I don't want to walk any further because we have to turn around and go back. And like, this is going to take forever. Um, so we ended up making it back to the car. And at that point, the contractions were, I think we were like 6 minutes apart, just really kicking up. And at that, we were like 10 minutes from the birth center. And so she was like, you guys can go ahead and just come on in since we lived a little further away. So we went to the birth center, and I just felt really happy and just very peaceful because I knew like this was the place I was supposed to be for this baby. My doula arrived, and then my friend, who's a photographer, this was her first birth to photograph, and so that was really special just to have her there and have her be a part of it too. But just this one was so different in that it was my body doing it completely on its own. Because I kind of were having these doubts, like, can my body spontaneously go into labor? Because it never had before, and of course it could, and it did. Um, so yeah, we got to the birthing center that night at like 6, and everything was just really peaceful. We did all kinds of different positions. We did hands and knees for a while. Um, Sat backwards on the toilet. That was one of my favorites, as we call it, the
That's a good
dilation station,
one.
as you guys
Yeah.
know. Yes, and that was just like such a sweet moment because my husband was just in there with me. My doula was so sweet. She like turned the lights off and had these little light up candles in there just for like dim lighting. It was just a really sweet time. But um, after that, we did a lot of positions that involved my husband, and I just loved that. I remember it so vividly because it just helped us to connect more and just grow our bond even stronger. Did lots of, like, him sitting on the edge of the bed, and I would squat in front of him and I could lean against him. And I even pushed in that position for a while too. And I remember like holding on to his hands to help kind of brace. And after the fact, he was like, I never truly knew how strong you were until you were pushing in that position and holding onto my hands. Oh my goodness.
That's amazing.
Yes. um, so it was just like so wonderful to have him there, and I just felt so safe and so calm, and it was just beautiful. It's how I wanted it. And I was progressing really nicely, and then I had her. I did want her to check me because it had been a while, and I was at a 9.5, and she's like, "There's just a little bit of a lip left," and she's like, "But you do kind of have like a bulging bag a little bit." She's like, "I think it's kind of in the way from baby's head, like fully engaging." She's like, "We can leave it if you want, but I can break it also. And I think that baby's going to be here pretty soon after that." And I had a really hard time with that decision because we ended up doing that with my second labor. I forgot to mention that she did break my water to try to help, and that just intensified the pain, so much more with that second labor. And so during this third labor, I was kind of having flashbacks. I was like, oh my gosh, I remember how much worse that made my contractions. Like, I'm really scared. I don't know if I want to do that. And I was just kind of talking to my husband about it. And as we were talking, I just kind of felt this peace about it. And I was like, okay, this is totally different because this is my body's own contractions, going through my body. I'm at a 9.5. I'm not at a 6. This is so different. And I was like, you know what? I think we should do this. Let's do it. So she ended up breaking my water, and the contractions did get a little stronger, but they weren't as intense as last time. In fact, like being a 9.5 naturally was not even as bad as being a 6 on Pitocin. Those Pitocin contractions were so strong, it took up my whole belly. But for my third birth, my natural contractions, it was really just my lower belly, and they were completely manageable. Uncomfortable,
Mhm.
contractions are uncomfortable, but totally manageable. I was able to just breathe through them, relax through them, and then have a rest in between. So I don't even know how much longer, but a couple hours later, I was like, I was complete. I was good. We had tried pushing in a few different positions. I was in the tub for a while. I was squatting, which I did not like that. I know my midwife was like, I think that's going to help get her, up under your pubic bone, which I was like, I believe you, but this is an intense position.
Yeah, it's a really intense one, that's for sure.
Yes. So I was like, okay, I'm done with that. We tried the birthing stool for a while. I was on hands and knees for a while. And I looked at my midwife and I was like, Emily, why is she not coming out? Because I was just, so tired. It was like 3 or 4 in the morning, something like that at that point. And I was just so tired. And she's like, I don't know. And I was just, kind of a little bit discouraged because I was like, I thought pushing would be a lot faster this time. I'm, not on an epidural. Like I've had a baby come through before. So like, what is taking so long? And I just got really tired. And so I laid down on the bed and I was on my side and I just kind of knew like, this is the position that I need to push in because I'm tired, but this is going to help her to come through. So I was pushing in that position and things were actually progressing and she was actually coming through and I could feel her. And I was like, okay, like I'm so excited. It's finally here. And as she was coming out, she had two nuchal hands right up by
Oh, that's
her face.
why. Sneaky
Yes,
baby.
yes, yes. And so my midwife said she looked like a little boxer because she just had her little fist up there, like by her face. So that is why it took her so long to kind of get through because it's almost like as I would push, she would kind of push back up like the other way with her hands, and it just, more had to come through.
Yeah.
Um, so she came out, my husband caught her again, and it was just so special. They laid her right on my belly, and it was just such an amazing moment because I was, it was another VBAC, but it was the fact that like I knew I was capable of having a natural labor. And I was just so proud of myself with how well I handled the contractions, how well I was able to just like have that stamina to go through that labor. It was about like 13 hours of active labor. Um, and it was just super beautiful. But also too, afterward they weighed her and my midwife was like, okay, she's 812. And I was like, she is not.
Biggest baby.
Yes, I like didn't believe her. I was like, Ashley, no way. She's like, I promise you she is. And so it was, yeah, her having two nuchal hands and being almost 2 pounds bigger than both of my other babies. It just took my body longer, to open up and let her through. But I was, just impressed with myself. I didn't know I could make babies that big, first of all. Let
That is
alone
impressive all the way around.
Yes, yes. So it's just such an incredible experience and being there at the birth center after, I just got to like be there in the bed and have the baby and on me. And what was funny is like a few minutes after she was born, she actually pooped all over me and her. And we have a really funny picture of the midwife holding her up and she just has like meconium all over her. And so it's just super funny. But yeah, it was just a really great experience. And it was, what I had been, that desire in my heart for 7 years. It finally came true.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Talk about redemptive. Just, man. And you just carry babies for a long time.
Yes,
Like
I cooked
your
them for a long
arms
time.
Yeah.
for longer. That's all. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
That's so, so cool. I love that. I mean, there's a lot of favorite parts in here. Do you have like a favorite aside from like birth, obviously?
Yeah.
Was there any part that just like really stood out to you, whether it was a special time with your husband or just him catching the baby? I mean, that's pretty like twice. That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, is there anything that just really stands out to you as just I'm going to treasure this memory?
Yeah, it was one of the positions that I was laboring in with my husband. And it was when he was sitting on the edge of the bed and I was kind of squatting in front of him. And it was just so sweet because I just felt very supported, like, physically and emotionally, because he was like holding me, during my contraction. But during my rest period, I would just kind of lean back against him and just rest on him. And it was just very comforting. And I just felt so close to him. And that was just really amazing that was how my labor went. That was what I envisioned. And it's, how our bodies are designed to be and how we're designed to be with our partner during labor. And it was awesome.
That's so great. I look back at your story and I think that you just were so in tune with your body and what was going on and what you needed. And like the fact that you're like, yeah, I've been pushing for a while. I'm really tired. I just need to lay down, and like things started progressing. Like you knew what you and your baby needed. And I just love that so much.
Yes, it was pretty great. And I was, I just felt good too in that position. And I guess you're right. My body knew because even though she was my biggest baby, I did not tear with her. And
Wow, that's
yes,
amazing.
no tears, even with the fists and all. She like, it
The
was just
fist and
great.
all.
So I was like, that position is great for, and it actually does help reduce the risk of tearing. But it was pretty awesome.
Incredible.
Oh, that
Thank
is,
you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add about your postpartum period or anything? Gosh, I don't know. Those were such great stories. You're a good storyteller too. Um,
Thank you.
um, yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, my all my postpartum periods with each kid were kind of progressive as well. I did have really bad baby blues that first time around. Just kind of having that birth was traumatic for me, and that was hard, and
Mhm.
it was our first baby. We actually had moved to Pennsylvania for a while, and we didn't really know a whole lot of people. It was super cold up there, and there was just kind of a lot of things like working against us. So I did have some significant baby blues that time. But then with both of my girls, I chose to encapsulate my placenta with both of them. And I really attribute a lot of that to just how I felt, because I felt, and I mean, my births were so much better too, but I definitely just felt more equipped because I was like, I've done this before. And I felt supported during both of those labors. And then I had my placenta pills, and I just felt a lot happier, a lot more at peace, and a lot more of like, I got this. I didn't have to, be sad about anything.
I love that. That's interesting to look back and like recognize the differences and how it made a difference for your postpartum period as well.
Totally.
Love.
That's really interesting. Well, tell us, do you have a social media? Do you have a website? Anything that we can find you?
Yes. So my website is thesunshinedoula.com. And you can find me on Instagram. My handle is at Mad Meyer, and that's MADDMEYER. I just combine like my personal and my doula stuff all on there, so you can kind of just see me as a whole.
Great, that's fabulous.
All right, that is awesome. Actually, Megan, you want to tell everybody where they can find Birth Boot Camp?
Yeah, find us online, all of our social media accounts, Instagram, Facebook. Definitely subscribe and make sure to follow us for continual amazing birth stories throughout the rest of the summer. And we have a great schedule planned for our fall podcast series as well.
Great, that is awesome. All right, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.